Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. So we start. Good afternoon to all of you and happy Pongal and also happy Makar Sankranti. Such a great pleasure that we have such a good audience already and few more people are logging in. We crossed already 100 and more are still logging in. So I have some housekeeping announcement first that we are recording today's webinar. And I also request all the attendees to kindly ask your questions or put your comments in the Q&A chat box, which all of us are familiar. We have been using Zoom technology almost since last 1 year, all of us. So here I introduce myself. I am Sanjay Sethi. I am Senior Vice President for Food and Sustainability at Technopak Advisors. And it's my pleasure to host our first maiden Technopak Sustainability Forum on the topic of emerging solutions for the world and unveil our practice in sustainability. So it's a great pleasure to welcome you all. And as you are aware that we are a management consulting firm and this brings together the leaders of sustainability and hopefully we will be able to bring the next editions of our sustainability forums, hopefully every quarter going from here. And it will hopefully also help live engagement between all of us. So a little bit of background, when my leaders at Technopak, Saloni and Arvind, when they asked me to set up the sustainability practice, I was really thrilled and joyed because I thought that this is a wonderful opportunity for me to continue my work, which was previously as Chief Sustainability Officer over the last few decades in food and agriculture company. And then I realized that it will also connect me with some of the industry peers with whom I have enjoyed working on some areas together. And I was even more happy when I found that Technopak Advisor was also already into sustainability in some ways, like my colleague Amit Gugnani, who was working on the zero liquid discharge from the textile mills, and Ankur Bisen. He had been working on solid waste and he had in fact written a book on solid waste by the name Wasted, which went on to win awards last year. So whatever we may talk to survive, we need to be burning fossil fuels that we all realize that especially the poor cannot survive without some kind of carbon emissions. So those things will continue for a long time. But what we have gathered today is to find out what are the business solutions and whether as industry peers, we can solve some of the issues together by talking to each other, by informing each other, and at the same time, do we have some solutions which is something that which is not so much visible. For example, instead of always saying that we reduce the emissions, which we must, can we also work together and go for those innovations which actually sequester the carbon or capture the carbon? So we do not deprive poor from the light or from the energy or those things which help them to grow, and yet we sequester those carbons which are about to be emitted right way back into those rocks from where those have come. So those are the innovations that we all feel that we should be working on. We are lucky to have our esteemed panelists who possess scientific knowledge and are great orators and represent India's largest companies and therefore are in a position to make a significant change. So dear speakers, it was really a great pleasure meeting all of you over the last few years. Sanjiv, I know we met only over the Zoom, but it was great understanding ITZ's work in sustainable agriculture especially. And we are really looking forward to learn from all of you. So let's begin with the introductions. So first of all, of course, the lady first. So I request Alka Upadhyay, AVP Sustainability at Tata Sons, to briefly, very briefly introduce yourself And before we start the discussion, we will have a very, very quick round of introductions from all of you. So, Alka.
Thanks a ton, Sanjay. Good afternoon, folks. My name is Alka Upadhyay. As Sanjay said, I lead the sustainability and environment vertical of Tata Sustainability Group. It's a small group residing in the parent company, Tata Sons. And the charter given to us is to handhold our operating companies in sort of driving the subject of sustainability. So I'll stop here. Over to you, Sanjay.
So, requesting Naresh Tyagi, Chief Sustainability Officer of Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail. Naresh, you have been winning a lot of awards. So, congratulations and kindly introduce yourself.
Thank you, Sanjay. And good afternoon to all of audience, everyone. My name is Naresh Tyagi. I have been in textile and apparel field for last 3 decades. For last couple of years, I am leading sustainability and CSR in Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail. I have worked in ITC and Aditya Birla Group almost 2 decades now. We are one of the leading retail company in India. We have multiple brands like Louis Philippe, Van Heusen, Allen Solly, Peter England, Pantaloons, so and so. I have been doing reasonably good work in sustainability, though we started little late, 7-8 years before. But in the space of retail and particularly textile and fashion and retail, I think we are trying to do something good for business as well as for industry and country. Award and all these things are just outcome. So we don't work for award. It's I think sustainability in last couple of years we are able to embed as a part of our business DNA. I think that is something which we are very proud of and feel satisfied. Over to you, Sanjay.
Thank you, Naresh. Vaidyanathan represents Godrej Group as Head Environmental Sustainability, and Mr. Godrej himself is the current chair for Global Agribusiness Alliance, which is a sector of World Business Council for Sustainable Development. Ram, kindly introduce yourself and also tell us your current pursuits and passions, please.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Sanjay. Good afternoon, everyone, to the attendees as well as the panelists, many of whom are very familiar faces, some new faces as well. Good to connect with all of you. So I basically look at environmental sustainability at the Godrej Group, which is basically 4 companies, which is our consumer products business, our agri business, chemicals, and the properties business. So it comes under the banner of GILAC, or Godrej Industries Limited and associated companies. So we have a function there called Good and Green, which was set up in 2011. We essentially looked at environmental impact that the company has and how can we make efforts to basically give back more to the community as well as to the environment. We had set some pretty lofty ambitions back in 2011, and very interesting that we're having this conversation now because 2020 marks the end of the first sustainability journey at Godrej. I would say we've been successful in about 80% of what we set out to do, but very honestly, that in 20% of our targets, we could not make the same headway as we wanted to, but there's been a lot of learnings during that time. I think one of the biggest learnings was to have a shorter window the next time, not 10-year or 5-year sustainability roadmap, because the way things are evolving right now, it's very difficult to predict the sustainability landscape in 2030, for example, sitting in 2021. So that's been a really interesting learning. Currently, we are the 2.0 version of Good and Green at Godrej is looking at a few very interesting areas. One is, of course, we've moved from the idea of net zero and carbon neutrality, which is one aspect of carbon, but more towards science-based targets and SBTs. And so all the 4 companies are now committed to the SBTs, and at some time in this year, we'll be putting out our roadmap for that. We continue our work with the communities, especially on water. I think water-stressed communities, especially nearer to our facilities, there's a lot of work we're doing there. And one very interesting new area that we've taken up now, which is, I would say, a very bold new ocean for us to traverse, is the area of sustainable consumption and how we can actually influence through our green products themselves, the idea of consuming products more sustainably or in a more sustainable manner. So that's a very interesting area we're just starting to work on. There are lots more, but I think that in the course of our discussion, we will get to those points as well. So thank you, Sanjay, once again for inviting me to be part of this panel.
Look forward to, very excited to hear all this, and thank you, Ram. And may I now invite Sanjiv Rangrass, the Group Head for Research and Development, Sustainability and Projects at ITC Group. I know Sanjiv has been the CEO for the ITC Agrotech, and over to you, Sanjiv.
Thank you, Sanjay. Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Sanjiv Rangrass. I've been in ITC since 1982. I'm basically an engineer who's done a lot of work in engineering and production. In the last decade, over a decade, I have spent as the chief executive for the agribusiness. I am a recent move about 6-7 months ago into this portfolio where I combine R&D, I combine sustainability projects and quality assurance. But I've been working on the sustainability part for the last decade. You would be aware that ITC is pretty well developed as far as the agri-business is concerned. So I'm here to learn from all of you. I will talk a bit. I think ITC has been into sustainability for the last 2 decades. So I will talk a bit of my experience on agriculture, which is quite vast because we export a lot, and whilst the Indian consumer does not has any requirement, all the consumers across Europe and USA have great requirements of this. So I've been doing it for the last decade. We talk about water. I think Vaidyanathan did talk about water. So I will also dwell on a little bit of watershed program, which we do, and quite a substantial amount of work which we do on solid waste management. So as I speak, we have launched our Sustainability 2.0, and we also have a 10-year, 5-year, 1-year target. So let's see how it evolves. Thank you so much, Sanjay.
Thank you. So Rakesh, over to you. Rakesh is the Vice President for Risk and Assurance at Reliance Group, and doing a lot of work on sustainability side, and requesting Rakesh to kindly introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Sanjay, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rakesh Agarwal. The core background being finance, chartered accountant, with some kind of executive development, deep dive with sabbatical at both Harvard and MIT. Sustainability is one of the passionate subjects, and I'm the chief quality reviewer for sustainability across the group. What we influence is through operating model that linking from the board agenda to the last man standing on site as to how sustainable practices can be ingrained the way we practice what we target to consumption. If we look at it, taking a step back, more recently, our chairman has given a target by 2035 net zero. And whenever it is said something from our group, generally we try to achieve it ahead of time. If you have to go back and look at the last 40 years, 3 times there has been complete transformation in areas that we did not operate it. We bring products at scale, and whatever we do is sustainable for long, including sustainable finance. If I have to look at the current impact that is being made, when it comes to NGO, the largest impact, both in terms of food and reaching out during COVID times. If I have to look at the indirect impact of digitization, it is practically replacing travel, including these COVID times. And whatever we do mass production at scale, the level of consumption that is there in terms of energy and the related impact on air, water, and soil is one of the lowest in the world in terms of per unit of whatever we produce. That's the quick introduction from myself.
Thank you, Rakesh. And now I request Anirban Ghosh from Mahindra Group. Anirban Ghosh is the Chief Sustainability Officer, and also done a lot of work on the agriculture side. So Anirban, before you logged in, we are still at the introduction round, and we are just very briefly introducing ourselves. Request you to tell us very briefly about you and your background, please.
Sanjay, I've heard every word that's been said. because I was on a link that was apparently a participant link, and with a lot of effort, I've managed to log in through the cell phone. So if you see strange pictures and stuff like that, well, bear with me. It was great listening to the introductions of everyone on the panel. It's an honor to be with them on this panel. I've worked in the Mahindra Group for 20 years now, most of the time in our agriculture business, in functions like strategy, product management, sales, and then finally into sustainability. Today, I lead the group sustainability work. You possibly know some of the commitments. They're very similar to yours that we have made over time. And like all of your businesses, and many other businesses in the country, the effort is to try and embed sustainability into core functions of business so that you don't have to look at sustainability as an extra activity. It's a journey that's proceeding fairly well, and we hope to go further as we go along. Achievements like becoming or having a carbon neutral factory or becoming water neutral create a lot of excitement and help gain more momentum for the work. So look forward to listening to you and participating in this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anirban. So now we come to Joe Phelan, the Country Director, India Director for World Business Council for Sustainable Development. WBCSD is my favorite organization, you know that, Joe. And it is everybody's, all of us, we have some connection with WBCSD at some stage in our life, and you are at the forefront of convening the sustainability agenda all over the world. And we really want to learn and keep learning and listening to all the videos and the information that comes out from WBCSD on a regular basis, and requesting you to not only introduce yourself, but also tell us about the pioneering work that WBCSD is doing, and representing the top 200 companies in the world, and also that how do we address the sustainability challenges in the post-pandemic world, and considering today's agenda of finding solutions to the changing world. So, Joe, you are our first speaker, so kindly set the stage for the subject so that we can bring in the speakers after that. Over to you, Joe.
Okay, all right, good. So thanks very much, Sanjay, and it's fantastic to see all of my fellow panelists, and wish you all a really happy 2021. So my name is Joe, and speaking to the people not on the panel but participating in this webinar, I look forward to meeting with you too. As Sanjay says, I lead the work of the World Business Council here in India, but we're a global organization, and we're a group of 200 of the world's leading companies who work together to create the conditions where the most sustainable companies will be recognized and rewarded, and will be able to seize new market opportunities, manage risk, be more resilient, attract cheaper capital. So we're certainly a business organization of companies who are working together to seize the commercial benefits from making the world more sustainable. I think, the big development from our members over the last few months has been that together they've approved a new set of criteria to be members of the World Business Council. So together there's a commitment now that all of these 200 companies will set targets to be net zero by 2050. For some companies in some sectors and geographies, that's very challenging. And there'll be a lot of focus on helping our members achieve this. But net zero emissions by 2050, to set targets for zero land or nature degradation and for nature restoration by 2050, to commit to inclusion and diversity within the business and through its impacts, and to transparency in disclosure of environmental, social, and governance risks to markets, because through better disclosure, capital will be allocated more efficiently. So all of these are now the criteria for membership of the World Business Council, and they're the focus of our work with our member companies to really scale up and raise the bar for sustainable business. Indian businesses are very much part of it. I think, the humility of the people who've introduced themselves on this call before me, is typical of the Indian business community, who are always open to learn, but also have a lot to teach the world too, or to share with the world too. So just looking ahead, Sanjay, just to highlight for everyone in the audience, some parts of our lives were put on hold last year and some changed dramatically. But a lot of things were supposed to happen last year that are now going to happen this year, which will shape the agenda for sustainable business for the next decade. So the United Nations and the Secretary General is running a food systems summit, which is scheduled hopefully to be in September. I think one of the biggest developments of the last few years has been the recognition that food is at the heart of a lot of the challenges we face and a lot of the opportunities that there are for business, having a big role in driving global emissions, having a big role in both driving some of the health challenges, but also providing answers to the health challenges. And as businesses in India know better than anyone, being central to creating jobs, employment, worthwhile work, security for livelihoods, and also at the heart of the water challenge. So the UN is catching up and is running a summit in September about how the food system can be improved, especially to contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals over the next decade. And our members are participating in a dialogue with the UN and with other stakeholders who have a voice in the food systems so the way that the CEOs of our member companies are participating is through some food system dialogues. We're running a series of dialogues where businesses are able to understand what's happening and share their perspectives and experiences. And actually, the representation from Indian businesses has been very good at these. So Sanjiv, your colleague, Mr. Puri, has participated, and Ram, Mr. Godrej has been there, and also Anirban, your colleague, Mr. Shukla, has been very active in those, as well as Jay Shroff of UPL. The second big event this year, which is going to be very important for the next decade, is the UN COP15 on nature, which will take place in China. And the aim of this COP is to set the framework for the world on protecting nature and what aspects of nature and our ecological world we need to protect in order to have safe and sustainable lifestyles in the future. So the aim is to set the targets for the world in the way that COP21 did in 2015 in Paris, but rather than for climate, this will set the targets for nature. And again, businesses are helping to inform that debate, and we'll have a strong voice at that event. And WBCSD will run the business day in China at this COP. And we're also one of the founding members, along with the Confederation of Indian Industry and many other partners, of an initiative called Business for Nature, which is the platform for sharing with the UN system and this COP what the potential of business is to contribute to nature restoration. And then the third priority this year is taking place in my home country, in Glasgow, in the United Kingdom, at the end of this year, which is COP26. And whilst the climate COPs of the last 4 or 5 years have been broadly disappointing, the COP of Paris was very effective, and both commitments by countries has advanced since then, as well as action and commitments by business since then. An awful lot of work to be done. The focus of this COP is really going to be on moving from these commitments into implementation. And because of its location, and because its proximity to the markets in London, and also because of the lack of progress on climate finance in the last few years, climate finance will be an important focus of this COP Fortunately, many companies have both a good story to tell on the progress they've made, as well as clear asks on the climate finance side. But this COP will be very important, I think, for India, as well as the world more broadly, particularly because of the climate finance aspect. And again, WBCSD will be supporting our member companies to have a prominent voice at the COP. And whereas in 2015, our focus was on the potential of business to contribute to 2 degree at the time, now 1.5 degree targets. Now the focus is very much on implementation plans individually and as sectors and value chains towards 1.5 degrees limit for global warming. So that's the framework. It's a really important year. And as always, the critical thing is the actions and the steps that companies take individually and together to move this agenda forward in a way that continues to meet the requirements of the challenges that the people we interact with all face in this space of sustainability, whilst continuing to thrive and prosper as businesses. Thanks.
And very briefly, Joe, can you also tell us very, very briefly about hydrogen as a source of energy? Is the cost going to come down, or it will take decades and decades for it to match up what is happening in the solar and wind sector, which is virtually in half of the world lesser than the cost of fossil fuel source of energy?
Sure. So all the companies who are on this panel with me are large adopters of renewable energy, which is now competitive, cheaper than coal, and very soon renewables plus storage will outstrip the price of coal in India. And you're right to identify green hydrogen. Lots of work is being done in R&D into green hydrogen, including by companies on this call who may want to share their perspectives on it. What I read, I'm not working on this directly, although we do have a project globally on it. What I understand is that by 2030, it should be commercially viable and potentially sooner. And it's about the investments that are made, especially over the next few years, where the biggest dent, can be made. But yes, the expectation is that this will be commercially competitive in the next 10 years. And as I say, colleagues are actively involved as businesses in making investments into this, on this call, so they may want to share their perspectives on it as well.
So thank you for the hint, Joe, and thank you for the speaker who smiled. So we all guessed it right. So I would also now like to go to our next speaker, who actually gave us the suggestion that what should be the topic of the discussion today, Rakesh Agarwal. You asked us to look at the various solutions for the changing world, and here is it to you. So would you like to first begin with what's happening on the solution side, especially on the emission side? So can you please enlighten us as to where you think the world should go from here?
Thank you very much. And this is a brainstorming kind of conversation with no holding back to each other, but we place our ideas on the table. Let's look at the macro first and then figure out what needs to be done where. Then the question is by how and by whom. As we speak today, the world emits around 50-55 gigatons of emission, that is CO2, out of which India contributes roughly, if I may say so, 3 to 3.5 gigatons of carbon, 6%. Now, when we put the price of carbon, because most of the debates that are happening where money is involved, people would like to earn money out of it. So let me give you the money part and whether the solutions are beyond money. So when I look at the money part, somebody puts a price of a carbon, say $10 a ton or $100 a ton or $130 a ton. Now let us look at it. If I compare the emissions of United States with, and I'm coming from the finance background, versus what is the PE multiple on stock exchange, that gives me roughly, if I apply the price of the carbon on the total earnings of United States, then perhaps United States needs to earn 8 times more than what it is earning just to offset the carbon price. If I take BSE 30 companies, without taking those names, if I take BSE 30 companies in India and apply their emission into the life cycle of the product, today they are insolvent. Large conglomerates, few, obviously I'll not comment upon us, definitely not us, are insolvent if I apply the price of the carbon. So any solution that is built upon those kind of lines is not a sustainable solution. People will find ways not to adopt it. Now coming to what it is coming out is carbon emission has to be curtailed. If I look at the sources of emission, largely 3. First, animals. As we speak today, there are 300 billion tons of animals which are being reared for human consumption. So once we speak about, say, animals, say 1 kg of beef is equal to 50,000 liters of water, 1 kg of rice is equal to 900 liters of water, 1 kg of wheat is equal to 300 liters of water. So is when animals are breathing, there's a lot of emissions around, and this intake, there is a big source of emission. So there are technological development that are happening in terms of vegan protein and technological breakthrough in terms of sustainable living and related awareness around customer. The way we have awareness around green products, will also have awareness around green consumption in times to come. And that societal change will implement that behavior. The second part that is coming about is agriculture. We'll say very little about it. It's a very sensitive subject. But now let's come to the industry part of it. Emissions are jurisdiction neutral, state neutral. It affects the entire globe. India has a strategic advantage that on paper, Government of India has allocated 33% of its land mass for forest, out of which some 8 to 10% has already been weeded out. When we take that forest area and at right times using drone and satellite images, trees are planted, it becomes a natural carbon sink. So if we go by the calculation that 1 acre accommodates typically 1100 large trees and each tree absorbs 2 kg, 20 kgs of carbon per annum, then looking at those background calculations, India Inc. with animals, with agriculture and industry as a whole becomes carbon neutral, provided there is an assertive actions between industry, NGOs, governmental effort, and in which case by some thumb rule, the price of that mitigation roughly works out to $0.05 and not $10 or $100. The Government of India some time back envisaged that this will cost around 45,000 crores. So when we live in a world of aggregators, micro aggregators creating impact at a scale for a larger purpose. And it is here a combination of exponential technologies plus assertive actions in collaboration with government can offset the entire emission that India as a jurisdiction emit for a better world. Having said that, there is also an additional role, which is a real bread and butter role, which most of the industries are playing. If nothing is done by any industry as an assertive action, the normal incremental rate of energy efficiency is 0.75%. That even if you don't do anything, just a natural uplift in the ecosystem on account of changing technologies and machines reduces emissions for the same level of output by 0.75%. That's the average. But when we leapfrog into technologies, which most of the organization are, and the prime reason is a typical industrialist sets up a plant for 30 to 50 years. They would like to have sustainable finance and societal license to operate for the life cycle of the plant. And those early things are factored in as a part of business model for sustainable businesses, which is cutting edge technologies, including leapfrog. Coming to the issue of advancement that we see, whether in the field of, I'll say, green hydrogen, let me share an anecdote. 30 years back, the cost of solar without factoring inflation was roughly around 400 rupees. And if I add inflation, it's a big number. Today, the lowest bid is 2.4. That's the power. And now with converging technologies at an exponential pace, green hydrogen will be sooner than what many experts expects, because disruption is faster than what expert expects. So yes, I see a big opportunity in terms of solution, provided there is a concerted action, sustainable living, as well as leapfrog improvements by industry.
Very good. Thank you for sharing this information and wishing you good luck for the liquid hydrogen, green hydrogen. And now I request Anirban to first come in. Anirban, I know you have to leave around 4 o'clock, and requesting you to share your wonderful example of Mahindra Group doing work on the circular business and the kind of work that you have done all over India, including the wonderful solid waste work in Chennai, and also your experience of energy efficiencies as well as water. So over to you, Anirban.
Sanjay, I just hate to leave at 4 o'clock. The way this has started, I would much rather stay and listen.
Wonderful.
Because there is a lot to learn. Unfortunately, I won't be able to do that. So let me just say a few words and give myself time to listen to some more folks. That's a great start, Rakesh. In fact, your numbers for carbon pricing had me completely baffled. I said, oh, good God, how do we use this tool now? And so I was thinking that what then is the purpose for using carbon pricing? The way we see it in Mahindra, carbon pricing is a tool to enable reduction of emissions. So if the tool can be used in a manner in which organizations like ours move towards technologies and processes that help reduce emissions, then it is effectively used. I agree with you that figures like $100 seem very large. There is, however, a school of carbon pricing which talks about a concept called shadow carbon pricing. There is no money that is put on the table, but the carbon price is used as a metric to help take decisions. There, the value is nominal as long as it helps change decision in the right direction. The value works. If it doesn't help change, there is no point in having the value. Of course, there has to be rationale for that. I'll just leave the thought over there because I don't want us to leave by thinking that carbon pricing cannot be used at all. It can be, but it has to be used very sensibly so that the ridiculous outcomes that you mentioned, Rakesh, don't happen. Okay. The pursuit of sustainability is actually very interesting. It began a long time ago when organizations were being held accountable. And I'm using the word because that's the word that is used in the ecosystem for the damage they were causing to the environment and perhaps even to society. We've come a long way now. Holding organizations accountable is probably not the right way to go forward. Enabling organizations to follow a low carbon path and a path that is good for communities and societies is likely to work much more effectively than trying to hold organizations accountable. Now, what will you enable organizations to do? There are very many problems we try to solve when we talk about sustainability, but let's just take one for the purpose of this discussion, which is to lower emissions and fight the emission battle. Fight the climate change battle, reduce, mitigate emissions, going forward, maybe remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and so on. So there are many ways to do it. Sanjay mentioned some of them. The easiest one is possibly energy efficiency. People have been doing energy efficiency forever because energy efficiency helps saves money. But what people have not been doing is probably energy efficiency at scale. And that is probably because the number of technologies we have available now were probably not available 10 years ago. So in our factories where we've been able to change upwards of 2,000 electric motors and make them energy efficient motors, or upwards of 3,000 air conditioners, or convert everything to LEDs. If we tried to do this 10 years ago, we would not have been able to. So energy efficiency is a great way to reduce emissions, but all of us know that. We also know that adopting renewable energy is great for reducing carbon footprint, also great to reduce cost, both energy efficiency and renewable. And all of us on the panel represent organizations who are figuring out ways of scaling this up, battling various kinds of regulations, battling various kinds of policies to try and say, okay, how can we scale this up so that we can bring our carbon footprint down rapidly, so that if in future there is any regulation related to this, we will always be on the right side of the regulation. But probably an area which we don't pay much attention to, or many organizations don't pay much attention to, is the fact that the waste that we produce and discard leads to a lot of emissions in the ecosystem and is actually value being thrown out. I must share with you why we started work on this end of pipe type of solution. Those of you who are from Bombay will remember that some time ago, the Deonar landfill caught fire. Around the same time, we were hearing stories of a lake in Bangalore, Belandur, catching fire. It would foam, it would catch fire. And of course, as a regular citizen of the country, you would wonder why we have to endure these kind of strange situations. A lot of articles were written. And in those articles, we learned that 60% of a landfill, it might vary by a few percentage points here and there from various landfills. 60% of the landfill is pure energy, usually food waste. And another 24% is completely recyclable, which means 84% of the landfill should not be there. If I had the chance, I would have worked on the Deonar landfill and brought it down to next to nothing and tried to ensure that we don't build more landfills like this in the future. But that's probably a pipe dream for me. So we said, okay, what can we do? And within the organization, we took on the goal of ensuring that we didn't send anything to landfill from our facilities. So that journey has started. 21 of our locations, factories, resorts, even an integrated city have been certified as being zero waste to landfill. That means that there is diversion in excess of 99%. We haven't yet hit 100%, and the effort is to try and hit 100%, but there are some materials which are difficult to work with at this point in time. We haven't given up. We're talking to any and every expert who is willing to talk to us to try and repurpose those materials and ensure that they don't go to landfill. Because when these things do go to landfill, say when food waste goes to landfill, it releases methane, which, as you and I know, is far worse than carbon dioxide when it comes to looking at greenhouse gases. Many of us take products from foundries. Maybe you have your own foundries. You know that there is sand being used in the foundry for operations. It's used 6 times and 7 times, and then it cannot be used again. Becomes really, really fine, ultimately ends up in a landfill. And because it is so fine, it goes up into the air, causes pollution. And therefore, figuring out a way of not sending foundry waste sand to landfill is a very, very important part of work that we are trying to do. No solutions yet. We've tried to make construction material, but we've been told that there are traces of radioactivity there, which we cannot possibly put into construction material. So we're still looking for solutions. Don't know where the solution will come from, but like I told you, huge effort is going into trying to make this happen. In the process, as we try and ensure no waste to landfill, a lot of value is getting created. Today, across the group, the business is probably generating 100 crores, which it was throwing away earlier. Right? You might say, okay, in a large business like the Mahindra Group, 100 crores is nothing. But I know when we used to do these cost-saving programs, how difficult it was to try and save 100 crores even in a very large business. So this is not money we should scoff at, and each one of us can create value. So these are ways in which energy efficiency, circular economy can not only help fight the cause when it comes from the planet's perspective, but they're great for business as well. I'll just mention a couple of things about water because I know you will hear much more about it. We typically look at, we don't look at water because it doesn't cost us much money. And if you want water, it comes from somewhere, whether it comes through a tanker, doesn't come through, or comes through your pipes, but it just comes. I don't think we realize how much water we waste only through leakages. So the simple act of raising water pipes from below the ground to just make it visible above the ground led to elimination of leakages and about 10% reduction of water consumption at one of our factories. We've repeated this in other factories to make sure that we don't lose water from leakage. But the purpose we do work on water, apart from the fact that it is an important good for the commons, is that whenever there is a water shortage, industry gets hit first. If you ask the question, if water shortage were to stop production for one day, what would the cost be? Immediately, all investments in water productivity would justify themselves. And as a result of work in water productivity, water harnessing, and water recycling, there are factories of ours that don't take water anymore from any external source for more than 200 days in a year. I know all factories don't have so much space that they can do everything, but every step taken towards enhancing water productivity through harnessing, through recycling, and through processes is great, not just for the environment, but also for the business and for the community around. Let me stop there and thank Sanjay once again for the opportunity to letting me participate here. Thank you very much.
Anirban, before you go away, we have a question for you, in fact. So we would like to ask this question from you. Regenerative agriculture is the cheapest and the most efficient way. You don't know who asked this question. Regenerative agriculture is the cheapest and the most efficient way for sustainability in agriculture. Can you please elaborate the concept, please?
Okay. There is a project we do which leverages regenerative agriculture and biodynamic farming in Andhra Pradesh in the Araku Valley. But while I agree with you that regenerative agriculture is great, making changes in agriculture is a humongous job. And I'm not even referring to the protests that are happening today. I've worked in agriculture for 20 years and trying to bring good practices or the better cultivation practices to farmers and ensure that they practice it consistently is a huge job. It's not that people don't try, the country tries a lot, which is why in the same amount of land, we grow almost 300 million tons of food today, where we were growing about 190 million tons 20 years ago. However, we are nowhere near regenerative agriculture. We are nowhere near hydroponics. We are nowhere near any of those very fancy technologies. Hopefully, as our farmers become better off, the number of people involved in agriculture goes down. We will see the adoption of protected cultivation and we will see widespread adoption. We will always have little adoption of all of this at various kinds of places. Over time, one would expect to see all of this happen. But this will happen not because it's great for climate. It will happen because it's great for the farmer. He will earn more money and it is a more effective way of doing farming.
Thank you. So I think around 150 people answered out of 200 who are attending the poll question that we had asked, that do you feel the need that you need to be coordinating and comparing your notes and doing the brainstorming on sustainability ideas with your industry peers? And 97% people have said yes. In fact, it has surprised me. I thought there would be many people who would like to keep it close to their chest. Sustainability being sometimes very, very sensitive issues in some companies. And I request all of you to vote, another 50 to vote. So the poll is still open, and before we ask the second poll in 2 to 3 minutes from now. So now I go to Sanjiv Rangrass. Sanjiv, ITC has done a wonderful work in water, sustainable agriculture, and so much on the other important issues around circularity and the natural solutions, and how we can use forestation as a way of solving some of our problems in a very, very cost-effective way. So can you please tell us that how do we solve this complex issue of carbon through those methods which actually cost nothing, and those solutions are there right in front of us, and probably we are not deploying so much of budget on those natural solutions. Something like peat to peatlands, and something like seabeds, how we have regenerative agriculture, and how we have taken care of some of the mangroves and those things which are the natural things. So please help us understand this part, Sanjiv.
Thank you, Sanjay. So let me tell you that I'm a very, very proud person being in ITC, because the fact that our earlier chairman, Mr. Deveshwar, started this journey in 2000, when we all used to wonder, what is this old man up to? Right? We used to question that. But little did we realize that the foresight helped us now in being carbon positive, water positive, and solid waste recycling positive for over a decade, some of them for even 15 years, which means we sequester carbon, we perhaps are able to save that much of water or do watershed far more than what ITC's requirements are. So on that background, I will talk about three things. And I think I have a decade of experience, not as much as Anirban has, but I have 10 years in hardcore agriculture out here. And I will talk a bit on sustainability in this area, because you see farmer protests happening. So I thought I must spend about a couple of minutes in this area so that people in the audience can understand and perhaps appreciate what is happening in this very, very important area. So just to very, very quickly put things in perspective, we have around 160 million hectares of arable land. China is only 107, less than us. US is 170. And Netherlands is 0.9 million hectares. The reason why I'm highlighting all these issues is that we export around 35 billion US dollars, whereas Netherlands does 90 billion. So 1 million hectare versus 160 million hectares. So there are, and we have excess production, as we have all been seeing, more than our required buffer stocks. So I want to talk about sustainability in agri value chain, because to me that is very core, because we're talking the subject of sustainability. I will come to all the things that you asked me to speak on, but to me, the fundamental issue today is farmer profitability. What do we do to make the large part of India absolutely sustainable? And to us, what we are focusing upon, along with Niti Aayog, is climate smart villages. We need to look at ecosystems. Gone are the days when we look at the value chain in bits and pieces. So when I look at the village, I'm looking at, is it weather smart? Is it water smart? Is it seed and breed smart? Is it carbon nutrient smart, right? Am I using, for example, precision fertilizers? Am I institutional and market smart? So all these things are required to make these ecosystems. So when I look at a village as an entity, when I want to make it smart, I'm saying I need to make it holistically smart for it to become sustainable. And for everything that we do in ITC, the most important aspect that I bear in mind is that have I managed to get the farmer profitable? To me, that is sustainability. Have I managed to ensure that he's economically sustainable? Is his environment sustainable? Is he socially sustainable? To me, that is why we talk heavily on the triple bottom line. Okay. And when I talk about the ITC's climate smart village model, I'm talking about already demonstrated results. I'm not talking theory. So we are covering 15,000 farmers, 600 villages, 7 major crops. We are evaluating multiple crops. And are there results to show? Of course. Yield improvement ranging anywhere around 15%, net income increasing by 37%, and GHG emission reduction almost by 36%. So everything has to go in a combo. You can't look at only carbon or look at GHG emissions in isolation. So everything has to happen in combination. To me, the other most important aspect, which to me, I'm personally very, involved in this, is water. The reason why is because I've spent the last decade in Andhra, and Andhra is completely rain dependent in major parts. Major parts where we grow our chilies, etc. There is no water. It is all rain dependent. So when I look at agriculture, it uses 90% of the country's entire groundwater. 50% of the agricultural land remains unused for half the productive months due to lack of adequate water. You can do multiple cycles. If you go to Godavari in Andhra, there are 3 paddy crops. 3 paddy crops in a year. And we struggle to have 1 crop in certain places, okay? So current level of irrigation is only around 46-50% out of the 160-170 million hectares I talked about. So I think we need to look at, focus on things like, micro irrigation, etc. I think Mr. Rakesh Agarwal talked about 900 liters of water per kg. So the number from the Indian Rice Institute is 3,500 liters per kg of rice. That is what we consume. And we're growing rice in absolutely the wrong places. We're growing rice where rice is not consumed. So the key measures for me, which I need to take, if you ask me where we are working, is how do I fast track irrigation cover? How do I make micro irrigation? So I'll have thousands of hectares where we have saved around 50% of water. So those are exciting things. How do we mandate that, right? How do we take the right cropping decisions? How to make it sustainable? Where do we move paddy and sugarcane, which are guzzlers for us, right? 80% of the irrigation water goes to paddy, sugarcane, and wheat. And when we export rice, we're actually exporting water. Then, how do we make drip irrigation mandatory? How do we bring in precision irrigation? How do we synchronize water application with crop and soil and water demand? And there is a lot of practice that we are doing called zero and minimum tillage to reduce evaporation. Mostly in the north, in UP, etc., where there is stubble burning, we have brought in around 100,000 hectares in the wheat belt under zero tillage. It means there's no stubble burning there. I know we all face a problem in Delhi. I think the biggest and the most, the proud area for us where we operate is in the tank user group, where we create all these watersheds, how to involve the community and how to make sure that they use water in a calibrated fashion. So the community decides, the panchayat decides. You can't just put in your pipe and withdraw water, right? And I think a lot of learning, as usual, has to come from Israel. Like Israel's water law says the water belongs to the country. It's not a common property. So it accounts for every drop of water. I think we are headed towards that. Someone recently talked to me about water costing. We talk about carbon financing. I think water financing is about to happen. And then you asked me to talk about soil health. So again, I will talk about zero-till farming, reduced burning of crop stubbles. And there are several states we are promoting zero-till farming. And I would say that we have outstanding results, both in terms of productivity improvement, water usage reduction, and reduction of labor as well. So, you talked about soil health. I think soil health is a complicated subject. I'm not going to spend time because there are issues like soil, organic carbon, etc., which anyway, India is quite pathetic because of rampant use of fertilizers. 80,000 crores is the fertilizer subsidy, my friends. And it's all primarily 53,000 goes into urea. And urea is used indiscriminately. So there's no nutrient application. So all nutrients are sucked away from the soil. So your soils are pretty denuded. So That's an area which we need to look at from a sustainability perspective. More the fertilizer, more the GHG gases. So your COX, SOX, NOx all get coming out of fertilizers. Okay, so I thought with this, I will then switch to my next subject. So I thought I'll talk about three things. I said I'll talk about agri-value chain, water, and solid waste management, where we have done some work, and I thought it'll be appropriate to share it with the large population here. So on watershed program, we look at both water supply side and demand side. And we do a lot of watershed in agri catchments area. So if you look at ITC, what do I have to talk about? I cover 1.13 million acres in 37 districts, 15 states, 19,000 water harvesting structures. We are passionate about this area. And we have built a total water storage of around 38 million kiloliters. And everything that we do is all built in conjunction with what the government does and what the local government does. So our water stewardship program is aligned with the government's flagship mission called Jal Shakti Abhiyan. And we are completely aligned with More Crop Per Drop and the National Water Mission. So I'm saying it is not only that ITC uses water responsibly. You know, we now talk about how do I ensure in my entire value chain I do it. So when I export something, my customer is asking in the EU and the US, what are you doing in your villages? I'm able to give them a complete report from where I'm sourcing, complete traceability, complete usage of water, fertilizer. That is what sustainability is when I'm delivering those goods across to the people who are willing to pay for it, right? And if you come to us on the water side, we understand hydrogeological studies and how to involve stakeholders. We don't go and create a watershed, structure just like that. We study the entire terrain, and we create what is called series of these watersheds, and we try and do check dams all across. This is on the supply side that we do. So I talked about 1.13 million acres. On the demand side, right, we teach people how to use less. So when I talked about irrigation, micro irrigation, drip irrigation, drought proofing, all these are ways how we teach our farming community how to use less water. But that is the largest user of water. Industry is not. If I can save water in agri, I would have met a big requirement for our country. So this is a major area which we work, and we work with NABARD, we work with various other organizations in public-private partnership. So moving to my third subject on solid waste management, I think a lot of work is happening. There's several of our organizations, whether it is Tata's, whether it is Nestle, etc. We talk about plastics. Plastics is the rage, right? But I think there is something more to it. Let's talk about solid waste for a bit, right? We generate 160,000 tons of garbage per day, and only 48,000 is recyclable. 26,000 tons of plastic waste every day, out of which 40% remains uncollected. But, and in 2025, World Bank says that I will move to around 350,000 tons of waste generation per day. 40 acres of land is being brought under landfill daily. Do you think the answer is more of collecting plastics? That is one solution, definitely. That's an important one. But I think we need to address the larger program, the total waste program. So we run 4 models for solid waste management, okay? And our key tenets, and that's important because we are not in for the short term. Our key tenets are partnership with local bodies, municipal corporation. I'm not going to pay money to someone to collect plastic for me. That's the simplest thing to do. I can throw money, buy the plastic, and show I am neutral. No. You have to partner with local bodies. Community management of waste. You have to do segregation at source. Waste management close to generator. Financial sustainability. So that is what we work on. These are our key tenets, 4 tenets. And 4 models which we work are, number 1 is WOW, well-being out of waste. Decentralized community-led model for towns. Villages, we do solid waste management, and we do temple solid waste management. all of us visit temples. So we run 4 models on this entire area. And let me tell you, in the well-being out of waste, which is wow, we've touched almost 32 lakh households, 52 lakh school children, and around 2,000 corporates. That is what we've done. We have benefited around 10 million citizens, and we have created livelihoods for around 16,200 waste collectors. This is sustainability, my friends, right? We have last year, for example, collected around 74,000 tons of dry waste and around 15,000 tons of plastic waste. Plastic is the talk of the day, so I must talk about that also, right? And our decentralized community-led model, we have touched 20,000 households, and we are composting. We're teaching them composting. We're teaching them how to recycle at their houses. We're working with temples across India, and temples, by the way, generate a lot of waste, right? And not only that, I know multi-layered packaging is important. So we have created, if anyone wants to see an exemplar, they must go to Pune and study what we have created, what is called Swachh, how we have learned and how we have taught them how to generate and avoid this moving to the landfill. So folks, with this, these are the areas which I had to talk about. So thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you, Sanjiv. In fact, one of the issues that you mentioned was about sustainable rice platform. I personally connect very much with that, being on the that I was on the board of sustainable rice platform, and I saw from close quarter one Indian company which is also represented there and doing a wonderful work on the SRP is LT Foods. The kind of work that they have done with the smallholder farmers in bringing sustainable rice in basmati and taking it to the world consumers in Europe, America, and other parts of the world, it actually tells us that we are actually bringing consumers to pay for sustainability. I mean, this is something which is very tough because we have been used to paying for our health. But this is first time that a company from India attempting to change the consumer behavior and saying, hey guys, look, my rice is something which will reduce 1,000 liters per kilogram of water. Would you not like to pay a small premium for that? Fantastic. And I would also like to now take our discussions to ITC, to Tata, because Tata is something that is really amazing us with every single day. $50 billion they added last year in their market valuation, growing at double the rate at which the rest of the industry, rest of the market, rest of the Sensex do. Alka, this is something amazing and congratulations to you. We have a lot of questions that unfortunately they are showing under one name. I do not know why there is a technical glitch, but those questions which are coming, those are around how to embed the sustainability into our business. How do we take care of our own people? What is that you do at Tata that even after 100 years, it's going great guns and it is taking care of people and yet keeping the very high ethical standards? We really want to know from you, Alka, please, but be very brief because we have only about 17-18 minutes left. And I'm trying to weave in all the questions while the speakers are speaking, and we have 3 more speakers, including you. So everybody needs to get at least 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll be brief. Thank you for all the good things, but I'm sort of wowed by my panelists and their work. Unfortunately, you asked me something which is more around the software part and not the hardware part. So for us, we are 153 years old only, and we would like to be there for another 150 years minimum. And environmental and social was always the fabric. It was always the part of our DNA. Fast forward, when there was a generational change at the helm, I don't think many people will know. That's the reason I'm bringing this anecdote. When Mr. Ratan Tata was brought in early 90s, he was among the few Asian business managers who was invited to be part to run up to Rio Earth Summit in 1992. And post that, he came over and we were among the few donors to create environment division of CII. So what I'm talking about is basically it's a part of our DNA. But what we did was we stepped up our work on the subject of environment, social, and governance, stitched it together, made it much more comprehensive sometime in mid-2000. I think Ankur will be knowing he was part of the group which was driving this from Group Center. And this was a time when there was sufficient, evidence shown that the climate change and all is happening because of human activities. So now let me talk about what were the cultural stuff which we attempted to do. We realized if we have to go beyond rhetoric, we need to start from the top. And we actually made all our CEOs and MDs, close to 150, now it's close to 200, go through an immersion program curated for our type of sectors by Cambridge Institute on sustainability development. So all the top management went through this program so that they understand what we are talking about. Then we actually had a very scaled up version of middle management capacity building workshops. So close to 5,000 champions exist on the subject. And for the line manager and the workforce, we conduct what is called a property called SMART, Sustainable Meaningful Action for Responsible Tata, a month-long campaign during the month of June to create awareness. And this is the 12th edition or maybe the 13th edition, which we will do. But what is the most crucial, and I feel very proud, is over and above all this three-pronged approach of immersion and awareness is what we call employee volunteering. And we have a property called Tata Engage, where we have created a platform where we do the matchmaking between the skill which can be provided by 700,000 Tata employees with the NGOs who need that skill set. So for example, I am right now working for a subject which I'm passionate about, the teaching for mentees who are in Uttarakhand, who are preparing for various competitive exams like PCS and all. So this type of beautiful matchmaking is done through volunteering. The idea is much more bigger than volunteering. The idea is to make our employees empathetic, sensitive, improve on those leadership skill sets which will be required if you want to take ESG as a part of your larger strategy, business strategy. So the linking of ESG to the business success is what was attempted through this cultural, I would say, focus. That is what I thought in nutshell I can say, but there's tremendous amount of work which has happened. But let me know if there is time, then only I will speak, else because we have been focusing on almost 12 issues encompassing ESG from the Group Center, which is a common minimum agenda. I heard on water, I heard on climate change. I have multiple views, but I'll give it to you. If there is opportunity, I'll speak, else it's perfectly fine.
And Alka, can you also briefly tell us about the afforestation program and how is it that we make it a success? This is something which amazes us, that how Tata Group is able to focus on something which I don't see many companies focusing on.
So let me step back. It's not afforestation as a standalone. So we have been talking about dealing with climate change, climate change with two-pronged approach. We are in all the sectors which are energy intensive, resource intensive, and we are doing it for just ensuring that we are there till perpetuity. So we are focusing on climate mitigation, but we are also started looking into climate risks, climate vulnerability, hazards very closely to our assets, to our supply chain, and also perhaps to our community, CSR community, because we also do disaster response. So when we were looking into, and we are working with all the Tata companies, bottom-up approach. It's not just a rhetoric conversation at the top. So when we started working with companies for meeting their ambition on climate change, we realized we are into multiple hard-to-abate sectors. So steel, chemicals, heavy transport, aviation, shipping, we are there. And these are hard to abate sectors and will be needing some level of, beyond the reduction opportunities, some level of offset. And we're exploring offsets, space in a big way. And offset can be done through afforestation. So I'm not saying afforestation is the only solution. There are a slew of solutions which you can embrace, but afforestation is something which we'll be looking very closely. Sanjay, we are thinking, we have not sort of defined, but what sort of trips us is that how come Indian government is lacking on this? And I believe perhaps the reason over here is where is the land? And I think someone in the panel alluded this, where is the land? Because there are a couple of acts which are sort of incongruous, don't go hand in hand. One is Compensatory Afforestation Act and the other is Forest Right Act. So they don't talk to each other. They are sort of linked. So I will leave at this place. It's not an easy subject, but we will definitely be looking into afforestation at a scale for our offsetting opportunities, but we realize there will be multiple challenges in the field.
Thank you so much. Ram, now I come to you. Please talk about the circular business of Godrej, and also how you have been able to differentiate the good from the green, and what exactly has been the thought behind that. Can you please talk about that? So, because a lot of people in India, sometimes they used to confuse CSR with only sustainability and sustainability only CSR. So can you please explain that how Godrej Group has been at the forefront of this, and what is that as the Global Agribusiness Alliance being on the chair position that the group has been doing? Thank you.
Sure. Sanjay, I just missed your first question. I think there's a bit of a lag over there. Do you mention something about circularity?
Yes, circular business, and also about your experience of water circularity and water stewardship. I know you, along with the ITC, have been at the forefront of water stewardship. In fact, ITC was the first company in India getting the platinum certification, and among the very first in the world. But this is something that which has really brought in a lot of positive results. I was personally involved in Karnal in the rice farmers. So please enlighten us, and very brief, because Naresh has to come in and we have only 10 minutes.
Sure. I will keep it very brief. First, to answer your question, I don't think we see good and green as separate at all. It's the two words, but there's a reason why it's one department, one function, it has one common goal, which is basically that people and planet are non-negotiable. So people, planet, profitability has always been there. People and planet is the two other pieces that have to be added to that. So it is something that, although I mentioned 2011 as the first time the good and green goals were created, Godrej know that it's been at the forefront of inclusive communities and forefront of environmental sustainability for a much longer time, almost since its inception. One only needs to go look at the mangroves in Bombay to have a very good idea of what environmental sustainability means to the company, to the family itself, and why it's always been at the forefront of their energies. But you're right in saying that there is often a lot of confusion regarding, sustainability and CSR. Mainly, I would say, this confusion raises from the fact that CSR is always sort of more of a mandate and more of a regulatory mandate, where sustainability is much bigger than that. I think CSR is a part of sustainability. I think what companies need to do in the social sphere should go beyond their CSR. So just to give you an example, I was just going through some of the questions on the side. There's one very interesting question which linked to something I mentioned earlier about sustainable consumption. I think that itself is a part of, how do you, because your consumers are part of your larger ecosystem. So if I can get the consumers to consume more sustainably, if I can create products and I can coerce them or sort of motivate them to buy more sustainably, consume more sustainably, I am influencing the overall sustainability ecosystem. So I think it's time we need to stop looking at things in silos. Everything is fundamentally interlinked. I think today, all the panelists here probably would agree that in their organizations, sustainability is pretty much embedded in each and every single function. I don't think there's a single function in an organization which does not have some stake in the game anymore. So I would just say that, CSR and CSR should be looked at more from a regulatory lens of what we need to do. That is one particular aspect of it. But I don't like the term CSR when it comes to sustainability, because sustainability goes beyond that. We have to look at what it takes for business to survive. Literally, that's what sustainability means in the long run, and that involves taking along the people and their planet along with us. Without that, there is no point in what we do. Coming back to the circular economy, I think water is one area where we have been fairly successful, more successful than I would say with our carbon mitigation, which also we've done a lot of efforts. I noticed some of the other panelists mentioned, but afforestation, I could not agree more. I think afforestation has been one of the best ways in which we've been able to work towards net zero. When it comes to water, we are currently at 450% water positivity, which is we recharge through our watershed programs 4.5 times the amount of water which we withdraw from the ground. We've been able to do this with the help of NABARD as well. I mean, due credit to NABARD's program. We've been able to collaborate with them in doing watersheds across 5 states. And one of our really flagship projects, which has been very, very useful in this regard, has been our palm oil business in Andhra, which is, again, like somebody mentioned earlier, extremely water stressed. So we have actually been able to create almost a model system which is not only water positive, but is almost entirely circular. There is absolutely no waste generated from that palm oil business at all, because every element of the palm fruit is utilized for some purpose or the other, be it for oil, be it for animal feed, which is we giving it to the farmers over there, which is a feed for their cattle, be it for converting into briquettes for boiler use. So that plant is currently at 99.9% renewable energy usage, which is, we are very proud that, in a business such as palm oil, which has a lot of, I would say, controversial aura around it, we were able to achieve an almost near sustainable business. So that has been one of the highlights. But we realize that although we have done great strides in water, it is something that we cannot afford to take lightly. I think Anirban mentioned this purely because of the fact that water is priced so low that it is almost afterthought for most people. I think they absolutely agree with many of the panelists who said here, the need of the hour is to have a water pricing similar to how we have a carbon price. And I think a true cost of water needs to be highlighted, because true cost of water also involves the cost of treating the water, the energy involved in treating the water, the energy involved in delivering the water, and also a lot of the risks, which can be in the short term or the medium term or the long term. You only have to look at Gujarat, and some of our plants have faced it. Despite being in SEZs with great organized structures, this one drought event in the Narmada River, and they were completely they were helpless without the supply of water. So I think it really, really is important right now to have collaboration on this regard. And I am not surprised at all when people said, in the poll said 99% of people say we should collaborate, because it really isn't a competition. I mean, by sharing best practices, by sharing our knowledge, we actually raise the floor. So I don't think if you meet any of the sustainability, the managers or any of the professionals, when they meet at conference, they are more than happy to share their best practices, because we realize that we are not in a competition with each other. It's actually all of us have to collaborate in order to raise the floor. So I think many more panels like this, and I hope we do a longer panel next time, because I really, there is so much to discuss and so much to learn from everyone.
Thank you, Ram. Sorry to keep you waiting, Naresh. And I would like to say that before you come in, we would like to announce the result of our second and the last poll. That does your company publish the sustainability report? And as expected, half of them have said that we do not publish. But I do not believe this as the representative of India, because I think a lot more companies do not publish, and maybe a lot of marquee companies are listening today on the conversation, so they are the ones who publish. And if we take out to non-listed companies and the other companies which are smaller companies, so they are not yet on that journey of disclosing. And before you come in, I would like to share with you one incident which happened on the cricket field in Australia recently. And what happened was Mohammad Siraj and Jasprit Bumrah, when they were racially abused, they know where exactly to go to the umpire and complain. So when you have your factories where you have the workers and who are into the textile and apparel business, and they have neighbors, and when they are having complaints, where do they go? Do you have a redressal officer for complaints, and do you keep their name visible outside your factories, and whether they can really reach out to him if the security guard doesn't let them go? So please tell us, what is that you do that Aditya Birla Group, gets all the sustainability awards, year after year, not only in India, but also in Brazil and in the rest of the world through your subsidiaries. So you have only 4 or 5 minutes, but be very brief, but very quick, and let us know. Thank you very much,
Sanjay, I think first it's good and to get insight from all my co-panelists. Much I have gained what I will share, but it's difficult task to cover in 5 minutes because that value chain, the industry which I come, It's built on that contradiction. One side you have full glamour of fashion, but other side that how that product is made, it's completely unglamorous. One side you have that overconsumption, which retail and brand do in their respective country. Other side, it's extreme overproduction and overexploitation of the resource. So it's not only that limited to resource efficiency, it's more for resource optimization. And it's not one company or one brand, because it is about the ecosystem. How you build the ecosystem where industry is laggard. 80 to 90% industry is MSME, not even that organized sector. So to bring all these things together and to do something which is built on sharing, built on collaboration, is a very, very challenging task. Let me share some of the example, if I can touch on that. To make one jeans, still people say 3,000 in Western world, but in Asia people say 2,500 liter water. But when it comes for that consumer use, for the consumption, it may be completely different. Where we are talking about that whole emission, you don't know unit level, what is the right value. That is the shape and that is the kind of industry which we operate in terms of environment laggardness. But same time, it's the largest employer, even for working women. 80% employee is the working woman. So you have that social element, you have employability and inclusiveness in that. But say other side, you don't have that responsible consumption from consumer side who will appreciate sustainable production and product. So there is mismatch. So how you bring all these stakeholders together, how you get to that old model or traditional model of make, sale and dispose to make, sale and redesign and remake. Because I come from that when I see landfill area in Delhi, Gazipur, it was just landfill area. Today it is mountain area. Other I see in Bangalore, water positive to now water scale. So how you get that whole ecosystem? I think something which we are trying, not only for resource efficiency, be it water, be it energy. Today we are that 25% renewable energy in our system. For example, when you pack a shirt, you need to have that 150 gram of packaging material. From 22 component to pack a shirt, we have reduced tonnage and tonnage of it to bring it to 10. So how you have that your entire ecosystem for product, to packaging, to water, to energy, to supply chain, even to responsible consumption. What will happen when consumer buy it? So how you bring all that practice as a sustainable practice is something which we have started in last 1 decade. It's still miles to go, but we are very happy that we are able to make it as a part of our business DNA, because all that social value what we talk, Aditya Birla Group is known for it. I may not be talking more only on social point, but how you bring holistic version of sustainability, how you do in practice what you preach is something which we have seen business value and relevance. To bring wholly industry ecosystem, I think I personally feel that responsible consumption, where you have to bring not only B2B but B2C consumer into that, is still, I think, early stage of starting point. But recycle, reuse and circularity is something which not only for internal resource efficiency, but entire ecosystem for all stakeholders, including your end user, how they bring product back to you, how you remake, redesign, and remanufacture it, which is useful and which is less resource heavy in terms of not only internal manufacturing consumption or resource efficiency, but entire ecosystem. So I have tried to cover in 6 minutes what has been given to me, but this whole topic itself is debatable and require much more time. I'll be more than happy to have anything follow up. But Sanjay, let me tell, this is good start. I think perhaps we need to have more time and more kind of theme-based discussion, so that rather than competition, there is no competition in sustainability. How all stakeholders collaborate and bring ecosystem for country or industry or geography we operate in.
Thank you so much, Naresh. You are my buddy. We have good memories of going to Yale for doing our sustainability leadership course together, and the WBCSD's marquee program. I encourage all of you to kindly go to WBCSD and join this sustainability leadership program. This is something which is marvelous. This is amazing. It really prepares you. It changes your mind. It prepares you not only from the point of view of development, but also from the point of view of how to embed that development into business, how you can be still responsible and yet make money. That is something which is what we are trying to do under this CSO forum, that we are trying to provide you a kind of a place which is bolted from inside, that all the sustainability managers can actually go and talk to each other in an environment where they don't feel that it is a sensitive matter which will go out of their hand and they will not be able to control, or they have to take permission from their COPCOM teams. This is something that they really can compare their notes with in an understanding environment, in a pre-competitive space, without harming the interest of the consumer. This is an endeavor that how we can work together and provide this the kind of learning that these big companies which are there on the panel, they can provide to other listeners. More than 200 people joined us today. Thank you very much, delegates. You have really given us a lot of good enthusiasm, and you have given us a lot of encouragement. So I hope that you will keep coming back to this when we come back to you, and we will definitely launch this recording link for all of you. And thank you very much, delegates, and thank you your companies for supporting you in exchanging this information for the benefit of the business world. And this is where I would like to very briefly touch upon some of the things that you mentioned. You spoke about carbon pricing. I know it's very controversial, but if you really see, in some way, it has come in at 85 rupees petrol. Come on, this is more than what we need to be paying. That means indirectly, we are paying a little bit of carbon tax. Let's accept it. And we are not cribbing about it, because we know that this is something which will indirectly or directly will bring in those solutions. And those solutions that Rakesh was talking about, that hydrogen probably will become cheaper and affordable as a source of fuel, or probably what Alka and Sanjiv and Anirban spoke about, Ram also spoke about those, that how we can actually make those easy to implement solutions implementable, and how do we make sure that those solutions are lighter on the people, something that Rakesh Naresh spoke about. And also, Joe, thank you very much. I hope you will start this conversation with our other TSF, Technopak Sustainability Forum members, so that we work together under your leadership. And before I say that we come to the end of this discussion, my only one-line message in the end would be that together we can save the environment, and we can also save it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanjay.
Thank you, Sanjay.
Thank you, everyone. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye. See you soon.
Thank you.